When my husband was diagnosed with cancer, we knew we would need peace. Instead, our neighbor started building a massive, illegal shed right against our bedroom wall, hammering until 3 a.m. every night. When I pleaded through tears, "Please, he's sick, he needs rest," the neighbor leaned over and smirked. "Sounds like he won't be around long enough for it to matter." I reported him, but by then the damage was done. My husband spent his last nights in agony, listening to the sound of nails pounded into our dreams. My name is Rachel. I'm 46. I lived in Keller, Texas, with my husband Dave until cancer stole him from me. We had a simple life. Dave was a welder. I worked front desk at a dental office. No kids, just us and our golden retriever, Max. 5 years ago, we bought a little ranch-style house. It needed work, but it had a big garage for Dave's woodworking and a backyard where Max could chase squirrels. For a while, life felt right. We'd sit on the porch in the evenings. Dave would sip a Shiner beer. I'd sip sweet tea. We had peace. Then cancer came. Pancreatic. Stage 4. They said 6 months if we were lucky. Chemo might stretch it. We cried, screamed, prayed. Then we decided, if time was short, we'd make the house a place of peace. We stopped working. Spent our days together. Kept things calm, simple. That was the plan. Until Frank Morley moved in next door. Frank bought the house next to ours at a foreclosure auction. It was the neighborhood's worst-kept secret that he got it for cheap. The old owners had defaulted. At first, I thought he'd fix the place up. He was middle-aged, stocky, loud, always chewing sunflower seeds and spitting shells on his own driveway. Within a week of moving in, he started building what he called a shed. This wasn't a shed. It was the size of a small house, right up against our bedroom wall. We're talking 20 feet long, 10 feet tall. He worked late, real late. Started around 8 p.m. and hammered through to 3 or 4 in the morning. I tried to stay patient. First night, I thought, okay, maybe he's just trying to finish quickly. Second night, maybe he doesn't realize how loud it is. By night 4, Dave couldn't sleep. He was already in pain from the chemo. Ratch, it's like he's driving those nails into my skull. That's when I went over to talk to Frank. I knocked, holding back tears. My husband is very sick. Could you please stop working at night? He needs rest. Frank barely looked at me. His brother was with him, stacking plywood. Yeah, I'll keep it down. He didn't. The noise got worse. Sawing, hammering, metal grinding. Dave started flinching at every bang. Even with earplugs and pillows over his head, he couldn't escape it. The next night, I went over again. Same request. Please, my husband is dying. We just need some quiet. Frank leaned over the plywood wall he was building and smirked. Sounds like he won't be around long enough for it to matter. That broke something inside me. I reported him the very next morning. Code violations. Noise complaints. Illegal structure. But the city's wheels turned slow. They sent out one notice. He ignored it. Days turned to weeks. Dave spent every night in agony. Even morphine couldn't drown out the sounds. He's building my coffin, piece by piece, Dave once said. His voice was so weak. I sat by his side, holding his hand, promising it would stop soon. But it didn't. Dave passed away 2 months later. The last sounds he heard weren't my words or music or birds outside. They were the pounding nails. After the funeral, the city finally acted. Sent out inspectors. Frank got a $5,000 fine and an order to demolish the shed. He took part of it down, just enough to avoid more fines. Then he started rebuilding, slightly smaller. I knew then that the system wasn't going to stop him. So I would. I started my revenge quietly. First, I gathered information. Everything public. Property records. Building permits. License numbers. I found out Frank was using a fake contractor's license. A number copied from a real contractor across town. I found out he'd built an illegal rental unit in the back of his property. I wasn't sure what to do yet, but I kept digging. Then I started going to city council meetings. I stayed quiet. Just listened. That's where I heard Frank had filed for a zoning change. He wanted to convert his property into an auto repair business. That was my opening. When the zoning request came up for public comment, I showed up armed. I brought photos of the illegal shed noise complaint record statements from 3 other neighbors, a printout showing his fake license. This man has already disrespected every code we have. If you allow him to run a business, you'll destroy this neighborhood. The board denied his request. Frank was furious. The next morning, I found a dead possum dumped on my driveway. I knew it was him. But I said nothing. Not yet. Frank's illegal rental? I reported it to the city and the county tax office. He got slapped with fines for unpermitted construction and back taxes. His tenants were forced to move. Then I reported his fake license to the state licensing board. An investigator confirmed the fraud. They fined him heavily and warned him against any future contracting. Because of his violations, the city put a repeat offender tag on his property. That meant any future building permits would be almost impossible to get. I also tipped off the HOA, who enforced new limits on what he could park and store on his lot. No more hauling in junk cars or scrap metal for his business dreams. The neighborhood turned against him. Word got around about what he'd said to me when Dave was sick. Sounds like he won't be around long enough for it to matter. Parents wouldn't let their kids near his house. Contractors refused to work for him. Even his brother stopped showing up. By the 2nd year, Frank was drowning. Fines. Back taxes. No tenants. No business. His shed, what was left of it, was ordered to be torn down completely. He appealed. Lost. Finally, he put the house up for a quick sale. Below market value. He barely covered his debts. The day he left, I stood on my front lawn. Watched him load up his rusted pickup. He tried to meet my eyes. I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I just stood there. For the first time in years, my street was quiet. For a while after Frank left, the quiet felt like a blessing. I could finally sit on the porch again. Max lay at my feet. The evenings were calm. The nightmare was over. Or so I thought. Because Frank's damage didn't leave with him. About 3 months after he moved out, a new family bought his house. A young couple, Miguel and Lisa Rivera, with a baby boy and another child on the way. They seemed nice. Miguel worked construction. Lisa stayed home with the baby. I baked a casserole and took it over as a welcome gift. Lisa hugged me. The realtor told us the last owner left a mess, but we love the neighborhood. I smiled, though I felt uneasy. I hadn't seen the inside of Frank's house since he'd left. 2 weeks later, Miguel knocked on my door. "Rachel, I'm sorry to bother you, but you know about plumbing?" I shook my head. "No, but I know a good plumber." "What's wrong?" "There's this terrible smell in the walls." Started a few days after we moved in. We thought it was the sewer, but he trailed off, looking pale. That sinking feeling hit me. "You want me to come take a look?" He nodded. The smell hit me as soon as I walked in. Rot. Mold. Death. We followed it to the back unit. The illegal rental Frank had built. Miguel had pulled off some drywall, trying to find the source. Behind it, we found dead rats. Dozens. Frank had sealed poisoned rats into the walls before leaving. Miguel cursed. Lisa started crying in the kitchen. We sank all our savings into this place. I felt rage boil up in me. Even gone, Frank was still ruining lives. I helped them. Paid for the pest control. Gave them the name of a contractor who could fix the walls properly. The community pitched in, too. Everyone remembered what Frank had done. But the damage went deeper. The contractor found faulty wiring behind the walls. Frank had done it himself. A fire hazard. The Riveras had to gut half the house. Insurance barely covered it. I knew then that I couldn't let this go. Frank might have left town. But he hadn't paid enough. Not yet. I started looking into where he'd gone. The sale paperwork listed a forwarding address in Weatherford, Texas, about 45 miles west. I drove out there one Saturday. Frank had moved into a rundown trailer park off the highway. His truck was there. Same rusted old thing. I sat in my car, watching from a distance. He looked worse. Older. Thinner. Probably from stress and debt. Good. But it wasn't enough. Back in Keller, I gathered everything. The poisoned rats, the faulty wiring, the illegal shed fines, the licensing fraud, the tax evasion. I spoke to an attorney. Not for me. For the Riveras. He endangered a family's life, I said. The lawyer agreed. If we can prove he knowingly sold the property with hazards, we can sue him. Not just civil court. Criminal negligence. We filed. Frank tried to dodge it. Didn't answer summons. But he couldn't hide forever. The process server found him at the trailer park. When he finally appeared in court, he looked shocked to see me sitting behind the Riveras. His lawyer tried to argue he had no money, that he'd lost everything. But the judge didn't care. The evidence was overwhelming. Frank was ordered to pay damages to the Riveras and cover part of the repair costs. The criminal side moved slower. But the licensing fraud and tax evasion reopened. He faced new fines. Possible jail time. That should have been the end. But life, as I've learned, has more twists than we expect. About a month after the court ruling, I got a call. It was Frank's brother, Tony Morley. Rachel, we need to talk. About Frank. About what he's planning. I didn't want to speak to Tony Morley. But curiosity and something darker made me agree. We met at a Whataburger off Highway 377. I spotted him right away. Same stocky build as Frank, but he looked worn down. He didn't order food. Just coffee. I know you got every right to hate my brother, Tony started. Hell, after what he did to your husband, I wouldn't blame you if you wished him dead. I said nothing, but you need to know something. He's losing it. Talking crazy. Crazy how? I asked. He blames you. Says you ruined his life. Says he ain't going to court again. He's got nothing left to lose. I felt a cold weight in my gut. Tony, what are you telling me? He bought a gun. That night, I didn't sleep. Max paced the house, sensing my fear. I called the police. Told them everything. The threats. The lawsuit. The brother's warning. But they said without direct threats or a restraining order violation, they couldn't do much. We'll increase patrols, they offered. It wasn't enough. 3 nights later, just past 2 a.m., Max started barking wildly at the front door. I grabbed the bat Dave had kept by the bed. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear. Then I saw him. Frank. Standing at the edge of my front lawn. Dark jacket. Something glinting in his hand. I called 911, voice shaking. He's here. He's got a gun. The dispatcher told me to stay inside. Officers were en route. But Frank didn't come closer. He stood there, staring. Max growled beside me. She took everything. Frank shouted into the night. Everything. You took my life, now I'll take yours. He raised the gun. I ducked behind the doorframe. Max barked like mad. Before Frank could fire, red and blue lights lit up the street. A cruiser screeched to a stop. 2 officers jumped out, weapons drawn. Drop it. Drop the gun. Frank spun around, but he was too slow. A shot rang out. Frank dropped. They rushed him to the hospital. He survived, but just barely. The gun was stolen. Another charge added to his record. Attempted murder. Tony testified against him. So did I. The Riveras came too, with photos of the rats and wiring. The jury didn't take long. Frank was sentenced to 25 years. With his health, he wouldn't live that long. Afterward, Tony approached me again. I'm sorry for what my family did to yours, he said. I nodded. Thank you for warning me. You did the right thing. He walked away. I never saw him again. Life slowly returned to normal. The Riveras rebuilt their home. The neighborhood healed. And me? I planted a small garden where Dave's favorite tree had stood. Put a bench there. Some evenings I sit there with Max. I watch the sun go down. The street stays quiet now. Real quiet. For the first time since that hell started, the nails stopped pounding. But in my heart, I'll always remember what Frank said that night. Sounds like he won't be around long enough for it to matter. In the end, it mattered more than he could have imagined.